3, 2, 1.
All right, not just any guest. It's a very special guest. The guest that we've wanted to have on since we first started this podcast. You've always been in the back of our heads. So to have you here,
Why
Mr.
the back of your heads?
Because you don't really actually think it'll come true. Like you do think it'll come true. Like you obviously wish and hope that you have a gentleman like yourself on here, but you kind of don't let it ruin your day. Oh, Jonathan didn't come on again today. He didn't come on again today. And to actually have you here, it's a huge accomplishment for us. It's an honor to have you here in the studio/basement. Welcome to the show.
It's such
Jonathan
a pleasure
Torrens.
to be here. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt your intro twice. That was very kind. And I actually give more thought to the fact that I haven't been here than you would probably believe.
Stop.
No, I'm serious. And I do feel constant low-level guilt about things that I've said no to or haven't delivered on yet. So I was at the Ice Jam recently and saw you there. And what an incredible thing you guys are doing, first of all. I know this firsthand because I was there to see a friend's son who's playing on the Notre Dame Hounds under 18 team. His mom was in Vegas with another of their son who was playing hockey. Their dad was in Boston with another of their son playing hockey, and their son just got traded to the Notre Dame Hounds this week, and it was his first tournament. They were able to watch their kid play in this tournament in Halifax because of what you guys are doing.
Love it.
So it was really special to see you guys there and see what you're doing. And I ended up watching the Hounds next game because the weather was dicey. I didn't drive in. I ended up watching it through what you guys are doing, and it's just the best.
I love it.
It's like tiny dome productions.
We work so hard on it. We don't even listen. Like these stories are just like, again, back of our head, because all we're worried about is like the product. So when we sit down and we hear stuff like this, it just makes it all worth it type of thing.
And you realize that the model can scale. You can have more cameras, there are more play-by-play people or color people or whatever, but it works.
Yep.
And just start doing it small like this and get your game tight, and then keep expanding the rings a little bit. Like the future is bright.
We have a meeting as soon as you're leaving. We might need you to stick around, pitch a couple ideas to us. We might need you.
I'm in.
So let's first of all, thank you for those kind words. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
We're really happy to have you here. And, all three of us, we go back and we look at your history on TV, film, whatever it may have been from back when we were kids. We obviously know the J-Rock character. Maybe he doesn't know John O'Vision and some of the other things, but we idolized you growing up, and to have you sitting here, it's unbelievable. And to see the craft that you've been able to, I guess you could say, master. Where did it start? Where did it start going, okay, Jonathan, wait a second, you're comfortable in front of a camera. You're comfortable at maybe portraying a character. When did it start to hit into your head? How old are you?
It's kind of, those are kind of two different questions in a way, because I've always, even as a kid, liked accents and characters, and it's kind of fun because I see it in my girls now. They kind of try on different characteristics and workshop bits around the house, which is kind of how it always started for me. But when I was a teenager, I was going to St. Pat's High School on Quimple Road in Halifax, working at McDonald's on Quimple Road, and we didn't have a whole lot. In fact, if you worked a 3-hour shift in those days, you'd get a meal. So I'd sometimes leave school to go work a 3-hour shift at McDonald's, get my lunch on, drop by last period. Not selling this as a good path for people, but just explaining kind of the context of where I was in life. Didn't really have the marks that would have allowed me to go to university. And this opportunity came up to audition for a show called Street Sense. And I didn't get it. It was a consumer affairs show for teenagers about money, something that they didn't talk a lot about, something that sounds kind of bone dry. And that was the challenge of the show, was to make that subject matter fun. And the way to do it was through parodies and impressions and putting real teenagers on the show to talk about money. So my first piece was to eat fast food for a week and report on it, if it made me feel any different. So I was still working at McDonald's and doing this piece for the CBC show. Long story slightly longer, the host that they did hire, it wasn't a good fit, and I ended up coming on in the 3rd episode of the 1st season and went away to the races.
Were you a bit of a class clown in high school?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember my mother sent me to my parent-teacher interviews in junior high. She was like, well, we might as well eliminate the middleman. Anything they have to say to me, they can just say directly to you. And I remember one after the other, the teachers were like, I would say, how am I doing in math, Don? And they'd be like, well, honestly, you're a smart enough guy, but I just don't understand why you have to ruin it for everyone else. And I couldn't I couldn't pass up the opportunity to go for the joke. There were no stakes. School wasn't my environment. I didn't thrive there. There was a direct correlation between the subjects that interested me, and if I had good teachers, I did well. If I wasn't engaged or didn't have good chemistry with the teacher, I didn't. So all this to say, I worked on Street Sense for a few years, wanted to go to Ryerson to study radio and television arts.
That's what I did.
No way. Yeah. So I had this conversation with a registrar who was there. It's a great program. I was working at CBC on Street Sense, and I said, I want to come there and study radio and television arts. And she said, okay, why? I said, well, because I'm working on Street Sense and I love it. Get to travel for work, and I'm kind of nosy by nature, and I find people will tell you stuff with a camera pointed in their face that they wouldn't tell you otherwise. And she said, but you are working. And I said, yeah, so I want to come study the thing. And she was like, our graduates would love to have the opportunity that you have. If I was you, I would show up early and stay late and take criticism and take on extra work.
So it would have been a backward step for you, is what she was saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was so generous of her and life altering. So I never pursued school beyond high school and just put my nose to the grindstone and kept hustling.
It's funny because back then, maybe not so much today, but back then it was school first, then job. But you kind of switched it.
Yeah, switched it in that I never ended up going to school. And it's something I always thought, like, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing an arts degree at some point, like kind of chip away at it on the side, and I just never have. But it's a great reminder that there are different paths to your destination. Like, school doesn't work for everyone. I see this through my sister-in-law who's a teacher, and I think she has 9 learning levels in her classroom that she has to try to accommodate and help and encourage and nurture and make everyone feel like they're doing great, right? So I'm having this conversation with my girls this morning. They don't have deadlines and due dates and stakes. You can't fail in school anymore. So I'll say, like, when's that due? And she's like, oh, he said Monday, but if you don't get it finished Monday, Friday's okay. And if Friday doesn't happen, the Monday after that's fine.
We were living in the wrong era. We should have.
I know.
I would have loved that. Yeah. No deadlines. I would have done well.
I know, but all the stuff that this registrar said, which included like say please and thank you and learn people's names and all that stuff, is actually the good stuff that has served me my whole career. I know I've gotten jobs because I say please and thank you and remember people's names and I'm polite.
Yep.
As dumb as that sounds, kindergarten stuff has served me well.
100%.
That's one of the biggest things they teach you, too, when you're younger.
My parents taught me it. Like, I remember I was ordering my own food at a restaurant when I was, like, 9 or 10. Like, you know how some parents just order for the kid? Like, yeah, he'll get a grilled cheese with some fries. My mom and dad would be like, you're ordering. Make sure you say please and thank you, and then you shut up. So that kind of taught me the skills back then to talk to adults, be polite, and get what you want. Like, you know what I mean?
And the older I get, the more I realize that EQ, the ability to read the room and sort of pick up on the vibe, is as important, if not more so, than IQ. Because you can learn a skill set, but the manners and how you carry yourself, those are the things that can't be taught. You either have that or you don't.
Great. I love hearing that from someone of your stature that knows those fundamental lessons. That's
well, I'm
great.
trying to
It's
instill
true.
them in my kids too.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
order for themselves and are comfortable in any room with any adult. And I think that's really important. Like, you know, you meet someone who has an 18-year-old kid and they're like, this is my son, Dennis. And they're like, do you want to give him a high five, buddy? Like, by 18, you should probably be able to look someone in the eye and say, it's a pleasure to meet you with your hand extended. My mom, it was a different time, of course, but I remember her saying, here's $1,000 in cash. Can you go deposit this at the bank? How? Well, ask questions when you get there.
Yep.
Like, probably too far to the other end of the pendulum.
Yeah.
She gave us so much freedom that we were always kind of independent in the world.
So did you have an agent starting out, or were you your own agent? Did you navigate your way and build these relationships yourself?
I am and was my own agent.
To this day, you don't have an agent?
No.
No way.
No, because for 2 reasons. One is the likelihood that someone could negotiate more than 15% above what I can, thereby earning their keep, is slim. And the second thing is, it makes people so fundamentally uncomfortable to discuss matters of money with me directly that it often works in my favor. So
explain that. So say that again. Sorry, I'm a little slow.
If you're talking to me about money,
yeah,
There are two techniques that can be employed. One is mine, and one is the John Dunsworth method. John, who of course played Mr. Leahy on Trailer Park Boys, all-time great character and human
Legend.
Legend.
What a mural up on Quinpool, eh?
Unbelievable.
Who did that? You know?
I don't know, but they should be in here.
Awesome.
He's a muralist from the States, and he used an iPad to look where the kind of tag should be, and it just kind of happened over the course of a couple days. Yeah, wild story.
Talk about talent.
And beautiful tribute. I burst into tears when I saw it because it's so evocative of John, and the guy who made it had never met him, and it was just one of those how did you get the spirit of him without ever having met him? Anyway, so if we're negotiating and you want to hire me for something, and you just say, we'd like to offer you $1,000.
I'd love to offer you $1,000 to appear on a High Button Sports commercial. $1,500.
Feels gross, right?
Yeah, it did feel bad.
You let the silence just hang there. And the laws of social grace that apply to conversation don't apply to negotiation. So you feel the need to jump in and fill the space because it's uncomfortable. And so more often than not, people will be like, I mean, of course, that's just a starting point.
We're clipping this out.
You did it
I don't
there.
want anyone else knowing this.
You did it there. Literally
Right?
what he's explaining.
And so John's version of this was, say the same thing. We'd like to offer you $1,000.
We'd like to offer you $1,000 to feature in a High Button Sports commercial.
$1,000.
If that's okay with you.
I just repeated what you said, but you projected the backspin on it that I didn't even say.
I was spinning.
Like,
Was
oh
he
my God,
upset?
I'm
Was
offended.
he
I
offended?
stepped on a landmine. Yeah. Because we're so uncomfortable talking about money that if you're talking to me about what I'm worth, and I run into this all the time, I would say to people in life, you establish your worth. That can be financially or how much time you're expected to put into something. People can say, I am not going to pay that, no problem. But no one can tell me that my rate isn't what I'm worth. So when I've drawn a line in the sand, and took me a while as a freelancer to learn the power of the word no, because you always think the phone's never going to ring again, or I'm offending someone, or I'm going to get a reputation for being difficult. When I've said no, it has done one of two things. One is change the terms. So the person's like, well, what would it take to make that a yes? Or worst case scenario, I say no, it doesn't come together. And then I've just bought all that time back in my life to do something I'd rather do.
So true.
Any point past the age of 32, 35, time's just as valuable as money.
It is. And we spend so much time thinking about how we spend our money. We don't give the same weight to how we spend our time. And at my age, my advanced age, it is something you actually think about. So for me to pick gigs, I have 3 criteria: fun, money, challenge. And any gig has to have 2 of them.
In that order?
No, any 2.
Just
2 of 3.
Any
2 or
2 will
3.
do. Obviously, the way you define fun changes at different points in your life. It's not fun for me to go to the West Coast for a half day's work. I have a young family, don't want to stray too far from home. It is fun for me, play a character I've never played, do a thing with nice people, go to a place I love, go to a place my girls can come with me. But anytime I've done something for just one, and it's usually money, it has not been satisfying.
Speaking of time, we had a lot of time over these past 3 years, and your Twitter account was probably my favorite over the past 3 years. 1, the photos of sunsets and stuff. 2, the positivity that you put out on a day-to-day basis. We're going to get through this on that scale. I don't even know what the third one was, but it was just something I always enjoyed looking at. Was it a goal of yours to put out a positive message during the pandemic, or was it just who you are and it just comes from your soul? It's just natural. Obviously, everyone needed a little bit of an upkeep during that time. Everyone knows who you are. Was it a mission of yours, or did it just happen naturally?
I thought it was kind of a crock, the whole we're all in this together.
Okay.
Because if I'm in a bachelor condo at Yonge and Bloor on the 37th floor, far from my friends and family and afraid to touch the elevator button, that's a very different experience than it was for me being in my home that I love, with the people that I love, with our lives not changing all that much. So I was imagining what a simple gesture of, hey, hope you're doing okay, would mean if someone really needed to hear that. And it turned out people really did. So it didn't start out as a a mission per se, but it sort of morphed into one when I realized that even a nice picture and a good news, we're almost through this, seem to mean a lot to people. That's an easy thing I can do. I have a very conflicted relationship with social media and the exchange, because the exchange has changed from when I was coming up. I used to meet people on the street who would say, hey, you're a buddy from Street Sense, right? Yeah. Remember you guys did a story on gum? Yeah. My uncle works at a gum factory, and we actually were trying out new flavors, and he brought home some dill pickle gum. No way. What's your name? Dennis. What's your name? Jonathan. Cool, man. Great to meet you. Now it's your J-Rock, right?
Oh, true.
I don't know your name. We haven't shaken hands. We haven't made eye contact. It's a very one-way exchange because it's just for a selfie for the gram. And the weird thing is, I love meeting people. I love hearing, like, where are you from, Dennis? Oh, funny. Well, I grew up in Cape Breton, but now I moved here. And it's a two-way exchange. And I take something away from that. But the selfie for the gram is not as satisfying. I don't get anything from that exchange. Being recognized doesn't fill my cup. And the other weird thing is, I always say when you do this, you start from a dick deficit. People assume you're a dick. So to get to, is all right. Yeah. Requires some effort. But to get to, you know who I met who's actually not half bad? Requires, like, it's weird. He bought me a piece of land in New Brunswick. Like, he didn't have to do that. Like, you have to work overtime to just get to, he's pretty decent guy.
Good guy. Took the time.
So with this selfie business, if I say no, like, you know who I met who's kind of full of himself? That's the easiest way for that to travel. Or the other option is low angle shot with a flash on Argyle Street after dark. Like, grab a quick picture, man. Gork. And they fire it up on the ground. People are like, whoa, J-Rock, man. Don't
Double
look the
chin.
same.
What's going on there?
So these are the choices that I have in life. Don't get me wrong. It's a high-class problem. And as a friend of mine always says, no whining on the yacht.
Yeah.
But people don't consider that aspect of the transaction. So I at least appreciate when people say, hey, my name's Gary. Yeah. Would it be okay if we grabbed a quick picture because I like that thing you did on that thing?
Did you have a conversation with yourself in the mirror before you went on this path of the public image? I did. I thought if I'm going to put myself on a camera, I'd be aware of it one day when I have kids, one day when I have a wife, one day when I'm going through life and I'm just kind of a little bit of a public figure. I had that conversation. I knew I was willing to take sacrifices for those moments. Not that those moments are as big as yours right now, but did you have that conversation with yourself before going on the journey that you're pretty much on now?
No.
You just went into it.
Yeah. And I took Street Sense at the time when I needed the dough and it was an exciting opportunity. I was 15 years old. Wow. So I didn't even have time as an adult.
You just needed money.
To sit down and think, okay, what's my plan? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I find life is like that sometimes. Like with being a parent, you never say, okay, Janice, we're ready. The room is painted. We're getting our mortgage payments. I have those RSPs. It's time. Like it's sort of things happen and you find a way to get behind it, right?
100%.
So it was never that much of a runway. Like every year on Street Sense, is it going to be renewed? Not sure. Every year on Jonavision, is it coming back? I guess we'll find out. So there's never enough of a plan to think, now I'm going to give attention to all those other things that I've always wondered about. Also, the technology thing has happened over the course of my career. It wasn't like that beforehand. We used to get snail mail, right?
Like, hey, J-Rock, big fan, like that.
Yeah.
Like, just like, because back when the show was like what, early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah.
There's
none of
snail
that.
mail. There's none of that. And that's why growing up working on CBC, as someone who was from the regions, it was really important because if you lived in the Pas, Manitoba, the only way to know what teenagers in Canada were doing or wearing was either a subscription to Chickadee magazine, which you get once a month, or you watch TV. So it was something that we did by ourselves, but we did it by ourselves in great groups at the same time.
Yeah.
So you'd have the same reference points. Everything's so fragmented and fractured now, of course, because you might be on Yellowstone season 3 and I'm watching Virgin River season 1. So that Friday morning, did you see Must See TV last night? Thing that used to connect us doesn't exist anymore in the same way.
I never thought of it from that perspective. everything I connect to is on the phone, not a show. It's just how's that guy dressing in New York?
So then what were the upsides of this show business life that after the conversation with yourself, you were like, despite all of those selfie moments, I'm willing to risk it?
What do you mean? What was the upside of it?
Yeah, like you had the conversation with yourself. What was the other side of? Okay, just know people are gonna ask for selfies, but
just waking up on a Tuesday, being able to sleep in till 11 if I want, not having to go. The biggest thing in life I regretted or hated was just having someone tell me what to do 5 days out of the week.
Yeah,
I really couldn't care less about anyone else's opinion. I do within the company, but for someone telling me what to do at a job I hate, I don't care what you're talking about, buddy.
Right.
So this was the upside of it, just being able to work hard on something that I love to do and actually see results. Like you don't see results for the first 5-6 years, maybe 4 or 5, but we're going into year like 7, 8. I don't even know now, but there's results, and it's the most satisfying thing in the world.
Yeah, it's the best.
Because I said this on the intro, like back when I first started this podcast, I'd go to Starbucks, just pray someone would come on, anyone. It would be my buddies. And you think of guys like you think of Sid, you think of McKinnon, you think of all these guys. And then eventually it happens. You're like, whoa, Justin, you're right. It's actually working. You predicted it, now it's happening. It's like magic. It's weird. It's real weird. And you listen to other successful people and they say just go for it and you think they're bullshitting. But then you do it and it's like, whoa, it works.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And if you put your head down and do the work, then it just kind of starts to happen, right? You get 1% better or bigger every few months.
Yeah.
It's happening.
With the J-Rock character, how did that start? In a mirror?
It's one of the great stories of my life because I almost said no.
Oh,
Was there other people auditioning for the role?
No. Clattenburg, the creator of the show, Mike Clattenburg, worked at Street Sense. And he went to Cole Harbor High and I went to St. Pat's, and there were lots of J-Rocks at our school. Like, you have to remember, this is early 2000s, right? Like, that character has been done and kind of played out. Like, we've seen that guy a lot, like No Regrets or like that guy. Like
not one regret?
There have been a lot of those characters since, but at the time it was sort of new. Like, it was even kind of before Eminem when we were on Street Sense. Like that, the Beastie Boys were around, but as far as like white rapper guy, we knew those from our high school. So at CBC in Halifax, they're producing like the Supper Hour News, and Mike and I would use the page system in the building, like, hey, Mike, meet me out at the truck, dog. And people are like, what is happening in this building? So his friends, Rob and JP, who went on to play Ricky and Julian, were living in Charlottetown with Pat, who plays Randy. And they were bored. They opened a pizza shop in Charlottetown, and it was a bar. And the people that go to a bar when you open a new bar in a small town are all the people who've been kicked out of every other bar for life. So they learned, like, the first afternoon, our clientele is going to be a bit of a bumpy road. So to amuse themselves, they started shooting these little skits, and they'd send them over to Mike on VHS tapes, and he would kind of watch them and sort of had the germ of an idea for something that might be a show. And he said, you should play that character that we always joke around as at CBC. And there's such a sense of humor about those dudes. And I always think Mike used to work at Sobeys in Cole Harbor with this guy named Arnold. And Arnold's one of those tall, skinny dudes. And the manager would come over in the produce section and say, Arnold, you going to wash the lettuce? Yeah, I'll wash it, man. And the manager would walk away and Arnold wouldn't do anything. And Mike would say, are you going to wash the lettuce, Arnold? And Arnold would go, he ain't beating me. Which meant if it came down to a fight, the manager couldn't make Arnold wash the lettuce. And there's something so innately funny about that. And it felt so Dartmouth. Like, that's the only word to describe it. So Mike said, you should play that character on the show that I'm making with these guys. And this was in, like, the fall of probably 1999. Wow. So I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. In January 2000, I was in a car accident and broke my femur in 5 places and came down off the pain meds, and I was in a wheelchair.
What?
And was in a wheelchair for a couple months, living at a rented senior citizens apartment in the north end of Halifax so I could be close to physio.
How old would you have been?
In fact, there's a hockey connection there. I lived in the the owner of the place, her nephew who's Halifax coach, NHL, famous last name. There was a
Bonus? Rick Bonus?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
Bonus?
his aunt.
No way.
I lived at Rick's aunt's place in the north end of Halifax. And I was in a wheelchair for a couple of months. And then I graduated to crutches. And then I was walking with a cane. And it was like May.
Was there a limp?
Yeah.
Pimp cane.
So I called Clattenburg in May. And I was like, I don't think I can do that show. It's starting in June. And he's like, why? And I said, because I'm still walking with a cane. Like every scene, I'm going to have to either be sitting down or leaning against a wall. Like I can't walk without it. And he was like, just rock it. So that's why J-Rock has a cane in season 1 of Trailer Park Boys. It was because I couldn't walk without it.
Is that where the name came from? J-Rock? Did he say just rock it?
Just rock it. Oh, that would have been good. The name actually came from, we were out at the Liquor Dome with Rob and JP, and we went to get fries at Bud the Spot afterwards.
Bud.
And
Shout out
Julian, JP said, pass the ketchup, J-Rock. And that's where the name came from. But all this to say, I almost said no because in my mind, the cane thing was such a bigger deal than it actually was. And in my mind, people are going to be like, man, have you seen that show, A Cane Guy? I'm not watching that garbage. No one cared. People just assumed it was a choice. So what I always say when I'm talking to schools is, whatever your cane is, real or perceived, mental or emotional or physical, just rock it. And as long as you rock it, everyone else is going to be like, okay, that's cool, man. And all the other people with a cane are like, that's my guy right there. So sometimes the things that we blow up in our mind as being our biggest weakness are actually our kind of superpower in a way. So imagine if I'd said no because I was feeling a bit weird about having a cane.
Yeah.
I guaranteed I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
How old were you when it started? So I'm thinking of just like, insecurities.
Late 20s.
Late 20s, okay. You're comfortable with yourself.
It's a tough point, though, too, in your life, right?
Late 20s?
Yeah, you're still not entirely sure what you're all about, and like you said, the whole cane situation, it's almost like your inner anxiety going, I can't do this because of this. People are going to look at me different, but then you opened up doors for everybody else going, like you said, that's my guy. And
exactly.
Wow, people that have a cane can do these things, but when you're 20, you haven't had enough experience to kind of lay out who you are as a person yet. I don't find.
When you know that saying, like, you'd care a whole lot less about what other people thought of you if you knew how seldom they did.
Yeah.
It's funny that the cane thing loomed so large in my mind. No one else cared.
Nope.
So we should get out of our own way more and care less. Like, that's pretty self-centered of me to assume that the cane would be in the review of Trailer Park Boys. Turns out the reviews were terrible. People hated the show when it came out.
Really?
All great shows. That's how it is.
They're like, not only do we did it miss the mark, we don't even know what the mark was. So we thought maybe people in Dartmouth will find it funny. And then suddenly there's like people in Alberta going, we love this show, man. So we assumed, well, it must be people from Dartmouth working out there. But then all of a sudden, Our Lady Peace, Taggart's band, took Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles out on tour with them across the country when the show was brand new. And it was just a groundswell. And bands like The Hip and Rush were like sharing DVDs, like tour buses. Like, have you guys seen this? And it just caught fire with athletes and musicians.
Unreal.
And that was it.
I love that you said Rush. Sorry.
When I think of characters, sometimes I think of characters like changing throughout this. Like when I think of Kramer, for example, he started out slow and dumb, and by the end of the season, he's quick, witty, really smart. Not really smart, but you know what I mean. But J-Rock character, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I kind of am happy that you're here, dudes, is that from the first time I saw you to the later episodes, it was the same guy. But since the actual guy sitting across from me, was there any change that the blind eye didn't see? Or were you the same J-Rock from first time to the last?
I'd like to think so. Like, I notice this with shows all the time. You can't change a show's DNA.
Yeah, but it's your DNA. It's
right.
Character specific.
I would argue that Bubbles, for example, is a different character in later seasons than he was early on. So I guess
Agreed.
I guess you kind of could argue that he found his swag and gained some confidence, and buoyed by the support of his friends, he kind of came out of his shell a little bit. But if you watch an episode from season 1 and an episode from season whatever, Bubbles is kind of fundamentally different. I don't think J-Rock ever went on that thing. Sometime around season 5 or 6, someone asked me if I felt sorry for J-Rock, and it had never occurred to me that you would. And I think sometimes when you're playing a character like that, overconfident and underqualified is my favorite intersection.
Say that again. Sorry.
Overconfident and underqualified.
Overconfident, underqualified.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. That is us.
Noah Dick from Letterkenny is that. Remy Nadeau from Shoresy is that. My character on Mr. D was that. J-Rock is that. That's just what personally makes me laugh. But I think if you're going to play a character like that, you can't feel sorry for him at the same time. You got to kind of believe that you are that guy, right?
Wicked. So, sorry, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the appeals of Trailer Park Boys as a whole. I think it's that no one there is feeling sorry for himself. Ricky's goals are just like, I want to quit smoking and sell dope so my daughter 10. Can have a nice life and get my grade 10. Like, he's not feeling like he's been dealt a garbage hand or having to overcome something. That's just his life. And I remember at points in my life when things have happened that weren't fun or pleasant, the thing that I hated was people judging me or like sad eyes or like, oh man, poor guy. Like, I don't like that feeling. No one in the park feels sorry for themselves.
Yeah. In the park. It's funny. I'm going to piggyback on that because I have watched probably every episode of every season 1,000 times, and I don't think you really changed as a character. It was just some of your terminologies where you start to go, ha, and stuff like that. So it was more like your quotations is what kind of changed, but the character as a whole stayed the same. And I think that's good because as the seasons went on and it gained more traction, people started to crave that character. So if you would have been gone from the seasons, people would have been going, where's J-Rock? What's going on? You know what I mean? And that's, I think what you're saying is where you stayed in that pocket, but you just kind of switched little things, and that kept people happy, and probably you as well.
Why? Like, wasn't at the beginning?
No, because you always just say like, no, I'm saying and stuff, but then you had the young boy as your son, and you guys were in the bus or whatever, and you'd always say like, get in the bus, get your jammies on, you know.
Do you know how that happened? I was working as a producer on the Jenny McCarthy show for VH1.
Yeah.
And French Montana came in as a guest, and he was so banged up on vodka that she would say like, how are you today? And he's like, and I was like, that's so, like, I've never heard of that. So I thought if J-Rock took that but kind of added a side salad of Canada Goose to it, so it was more like, wah, that's where that came from. But I never want to overstay my welcome. I would always rather be the character that people are like happy to see than that's enough J-Rock. I always saw him as garnish, not the main dish. I don't think you'd want to see a J-Rock spinoff. Like that number 7 to 10 on the call sheet. That's my sweet spot.
Okay.
No one gets tired of you. So every 7 pages, I'd show up and diss Randy for a couple of pages and be gone. But I always felt like, when is it tired? When's it played out? Are people getting sick of this? I would rather just fundamentally, I'd rather leave before people are like, come on, buddy, it's getting a little old. So there were things that I could get behind because I was in the writer's room in those later seasons too. Felt like J-Rock having a kid was like, that's new turf. That's fun. And then in the last season, as kind of a victory lap, J-Rock got married to this woman from Spain, and I kind of, or from Mexico. And I kind of bought that. If you watch the prequel, the Christmas special, J-Rock and T were grunge. So there had kind of been a history established where he does kind of scotch tape different personas onto himself. So I sort of bought that he would be the guy who went to Cancun for a week and would come back with an accent.
Okay.
That's just how you rolled in the show too.
Yeah.
Though, right.
And especially he's keeping it up in front of her. Like, what are you doing? What are your face? But then with the boys, he's like, dog, you got to, she doesn't know I'm not Mexican, dog. You got to cover for me. Like, I buy that. It's a little cartoonish as a premise, but I actually buy the math of that. That checks out for me.
I feel like the character itself is kind of cartoonish though too, right? Like you said, you guys were just joking around over the walkie-talkies, and that kind of came through, and you said there's a ton of J-Rocks out there, which when you said it, we all died because it's true. But it's just now to put the spotlight on that specific character, you almost have to cartoonize it.
I was worried because I wasn't sure it would be taken in the spirit it was intended. So if the rap community would be like, why are you making fun of us?
Yeah.
And then if the real J-Rocks would be offended, which is kind of a funny
the guy washing the lettuce.
These days,
from me.
These days maybe, but back then you weren't offending people as easily,
That's
right?
the thing. So the rap community was like, first of all, thank you for making fun of those dudes. And then the J-Rocks were like, thanks for giving us a voice, G.
That's it.
Like, amazing.
You made them popular.
Somehow it didn't offend anyone.
Yep.
And to your point, you couldn't probably have a J-Rock now without it being put under the microscope. But But ultimately, the thing that I'm really proud of about the show is that if there's an external force that's a threat present, Leahy and Ricky banded together and fought side by side, right? So the thing that I love about J-Rock is that's just J-Rock. And when you grow up in a small town, there are those guys, like everyone knows Kenny, who wears a vest with no shirt under it and hangs out by the Irving.
Yep.
That's just Kenny.
Oh, that's just Kenny.
And it's okay to have just Kennys in the world. And I like in that show, in the earlier seasons especially, no one ever labeled Randy and Leahy's relationship. It was just Leahy and Randy. No one ever called Bubbles disparaging terms that society sometimes uses for people who are overcoming challenges. He's just Bubbles. And that is, it's a little fine line of morals, but that was the thing that Clattenburg did. Especially, he would sand off the rough edges with a close-up of a kitten or a little girl riding a bike.
Man, that's so funny that you say that, because those are the little things that you notice when you watch the show a lot. You're like, you don't know why, but it's like there's like a conflict in the show, and then all of a sudden it's just like a cat digging in some trash, and you're like,
so that's what that is.
It's
what
like
is
Nerf violence.
with
Like,
a Nerf gun.
Yeah, those guys can like fire off however many rounds, and like no one ever, like, imagine yelling, "Ow, I was just shot." That's probably not what happens, I'm guessing, when you get shot.
I just died.
But even on the gun stuff, like when it started airing in the States, it was on BBC America and it was bleeped.
What?
So
the gunshot?
The show.
Yeah. Oh, the show.
The show.
Jesus, every second word.
Every second word. So people thought it was a documentary, not a mockumentary.
Big difference.
And there's such a trailer park culture in the States that people didn't find it as innately funny.
No,
Because it was cops from a criminal's point of view.
There was my cousin went to one of your guys' parties back in the mid 2000s, and there was people at
That's
the party.
such a Maritimes like name drop.
I know, but like
cousin.
there was people at that party. She said that thought you guys were not characters. Like
Yes.
thought like, and I thought she was joking. She goes, "No, Justin." Like someone went up to Ricky and asked him for a joint. Like it called him Ricky. And
I think if I hadn't been on Jonovision, that might have been even worse, because I think I was the one sort of nod to the fact that this wasn't entirely real.
That blew my mind when I heard that story. I was like, and imagine people all over the world that aren't actually from here that are watching this, because it does. It looks like a documentary style. It's crazy.
What I couldn't understand is why, especially now with Netflix, it's in Finland and Germany and it's all over the world. Why does someone in Norway go, that speaks to me? And I was talking to a guy from, I think it's from Argentina recently, and he learned to speak English watching Trailer Park Boys. He would tape a bunch of episodes and bring them in, and they would watch them with his English teacher. And he found it funny, and I was like, what? Why, though? Why is that funny to you? It's so geographically specific to us. And he said, we have like gypsies, like kind of traveling vagabonds, and so we can relate to a transient population and desperation and doing the best they can.
Australia, I heard too.
Yeah,
Australia
apparently huge.
Can you imagine learning the English language through episodes of Trailer Park Boys?
Imagine.
Like the vulgar you'd have, you know? Well, that's it.
The best part was Clattenburg had an ongoing negotiation with the network in the early seasons where the FPMs, like Fs per minute, were at like 4 to 6. And then season 2, he was like, what if I wanted a C word?
Yeah.
And they're like, give us back 2 Fs and you can have 1 C.
That's what like the meeting would be like with the network.
Bartering, yeah.
Where is the showcase? Is it showcase that? No.
Yeah,
showcase. But where is their office, or was it just over the phone? You guys had these conversations.
Good question. Probably over the phone, sometimes face to face.
Sitting in a boardroom.
Yeah, like as it started to get more traction, Mike started to get more freedom, rightfully so.
Yeah.
And we were able to improvise a lot and try to make each other laugh.
And at what point came, okay, whoa, let's wait. Jonathan, this guy's pretty talented. Maybe let's give him a writing credit. Maybe let's give him a producer credit. Not just on Trailer Park Boys, but in other aspects of your career. You're given the reins to create your own things. At what point of the Trailer Park Boys was like, oh, let's give this guy a little creative freedom. Let's see what he comes up with. When did that come about?
Well, I guess it's not something I was handed so much as something I took or fought for. Mike and I made short films together back in the day, like on actual film. We made music videos for people. There's a music video for band called Hip Club Groove. Corey from Trailer Park Boys was in a band called Hip Club Groove. The song's called Shootin' to Gift, and Clattenburg directed it. I produced it. I'm in it. Corey from Trailer Park Boys, and the other two guys went on to be in Len, Steal My Sunshine. Like there was and Hip Club Groove's record, their biggest record, was called Trailer Park Hip Hop. Yeah.
That's a market.
Just all these tentacles sort of intertwined from Halifax at that time, arts-wise.
That's crazy.
That's what it says here.
Oh, do you have it up?
Hip Club Groove, Trailer Park Hip Hop.
Click it. I want to click it. Just turn it up.
By the way, bangers.
Just face it towards us. Oh, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah, you got to pay the bills, boys. That's crazy.
There's some references in it to things that happened at the time, like Lorena Bobbitt. Do you remember her? She cut off her husband's bird. That's worth a Google.
That's definitely worth a Google.
His name was John Wayne Bobbitt. He got it sewn back on, and then he was in an adult movie just to show people that it still worked. Cheers.
No.
Yeah.
So there's Corey there.
We was babies.
Have you ever been out with those guys like downtown and someone goes smokes? Do they ever get annoyed at that?
Yeah.
No.
You know who loved it the most was Leahy, because people would pull up next to him at a red light and yell, "F you, Leahy," and he was just like,
He loved it.
yeah. You know why? Because he started working in theater in the 50s and made no money and raised a family and did it for the love of art, and no one got it more than he did what lightning in a bottle this was. For everyone else,
intended.
yeah. For everyone else, it was like you get on a show and it blows up and you're a household name. But for him, he was like, actually, I've been in the trenches for 40 years and this is a real gift. No. So he savored it.
Was he one of the first ones? Who was like the first one on the set that like knew this is going to be something? Because didn't you say early, everyone was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like who was the first one to
like
go?
So much fun. Making each other laugh and bringing costumes from home and eating peanut butter sandwiches. Like it was not glamorous, but it was obviously a lot of fun. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think anyone there would have told you it would have blown up the way we thought. But one of my favorite stories is Pat, who plays Randy, worked at Sparkling Springs Water, and he took vacation days to shoot the first season. And when he went back to work and the show started to come out, his boss was like, I think you got to pick, Pat. I don't think you can be buddy on TV with no shirt on and one of our like VPs of sales. Like it's one or the other. So Pat was like, well, I guess I'm the guy on TV with no shirt on then. And a year later, the boss brought him back to do training sessions as Randy. So he came back to Sparkling Springs with no shirt on to train people how to do the job.
You want to talk about opening a different door.
Exactly.
That's crazy. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The switch of lifestyle too. Just the guy doing water to the guy just getting recognized.
Yeah.
It goes back to doing things out of your comfort zone though too, right? Like it would have been probably a lot easier for him to just stay in his current role, but when you go into something and you enjoy it so much and you start to see a little bit of success, you're kind of going, okay, well maybe this isn't what I was afraid of. You know, maybe this is in my comfort zone now, and then you just take off with it. And now look at it. You go to the States and they go, oh, where are you from? And you're like, oh, I'm from Halifax. And they're like, huh? And then they're like, Nova Scotia. And you're like, oh, you know the Trailer Park Boys? And I'm like, not everybody from Nova Scotia knows them personally. We just happen to have aired the show before everybody else, right?
I'll give you our two favorite, or at least my two favorite. My mom's in Moncton for 2 weeks. We're throwing it down. Old school pimp tight.
Yeah.
And then...
That's a pretty good J-Rock, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then the other one is... I ain't changed if I sell. What does he say?
I ain't changed since I started selling records.
No, I ain't gonna change since I started selling records. I'm keeping it the fuck real. Yeah. And that's why I always thought about this. Whenever I got like my first like photo with someone that wanted a photo with me, I always thought I'm keeping it the fuck real. Yeah, I'm not doing. Yeah,
we send that clip to each other a lot.
Yeah, it humbles us. Like
there are some weird moments over the course of that show where like we started in Lower Sackville sitting on Coleman coolers kind of between takes and in the hot sun, and then I think for the first movie, or it might have been the second movie, the credit bed was Can't Not Be Feeling This, one of J-Rock's tracks, and I performed it at Massey Hall. That was sold out for Ricky Julian and Bubbles show, and it's 3 tiers of people going, J-Rock. I'm like, I'm not a rapper, but I play one on TV, but I'm performing a rap song that I wrote in front of an audience that paid to be here. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
That's one of those, Dear Diary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally. You'll never guess what happened tonight.
That's great. Yeah.
I could never, yeah.
I got to ask, don't be offended, but you know, you think iconic roles. and people get stuck in them, and you got to not reinvent yourself, but you got to somehow get out of it. You know, you think of Seinfeld, like all these George, Kramer, Elaine. What was your process of it, of getting out of it and altering into something else? And how did you maneuver it in your head?
After Jonovision, I turned 30 and moved to LA. It was sort of self-imposed exile, partially to answer the what if question, like what would happen if I went there? And I found out. It's nicer than I thought, made friends for life. All the cliches that you assume will be there are there, like the wide-eyed actresses and the sleazy agents. Those people are all there. But I didn't expect to find my people there. I met people that were ambitious and curious and adventurous and creative and funny. Like those people are there too. Makes sense. It's the kind of mecca for my business. But the thing that you can't do there, I discovered, is be a spork. You have to be one thing. I'm a leading man, a Hallmark movie guy. I am a dramatic cop show lead. I'm a sitcom wacky neighbor. In Canada, I can be all those things. Like I hosted a talk show as myself, but there were sketches in which I played characters. People in Canada were like, oh, okay, he's J-Rock now. And okay, J-Rock is the guy on Mr. D now.
Yep.
You can kind of be a bunch of different things because you have to be. It's funny, people will sometimes say like, man, I'll be Noah Dick in Letterkenny, and people will write, go back to the boys. I can't. If I'd relied on being a 50-year-old man in a do-rag to feed my family, my life would be much different right now. So I think leaving at the right time has been the thing that's allowed me to have a career versus a role.
Did you have advice from someone else when you made these decisions, or did you just
always kind of instinctive? Like could kind of feel like when it was played out, or yeah. I mean, in the case of J-Rock, like I said, I had a kid, I had a wife. I didn't know what else you could do. You just can't go back to Know 'em Saying Randy, inflatable Elvis shit, because it kind of gets played out. But as a result, it's sort of made it mythical. It might be overstating it, but it's something that people look in the rearview mirror fondly at, right? I don't want to be touring as J-Rock now.
I love it. Yeah.
I think no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, it just seems like it's a thought out career path. It just seems like you've sat down and kind of thought about the next step before you made it. If you know something's going to be played out, okay.
Well, and not to suggest for a moment that every morning there are 10 offers on the table and I have the luxury of sifting through them and choosing. You often don't. You often have to, especially in this part of the country, there's a proud tradition of crossing your arms and saying, man, it must be nice. You know, people from Toronto get everything, or they have more shows or whatever. You have to generate your own stuff here, as you guys know better than anybody. So all the must be nice energy, I've just converted into what's next energy. So I have had to and wanted to kind of diversify what I do. We have trailers that we rent to movies and TV shows. That's something that happens whether I'm working or not. Oh, cool. Like if I'd been relying on my gorgeosity during the pandemic, we would be starving. So my father-in-law always says, you know how you do 10 things kind of half-assed? Why don't you pick 3 and do them properly?
Full out.
Yeah.
Great point. So I've tried to pick a few things, like some for love, some for money, some for both, but that if the phone stops ringing as an actor, we'll be okay.
In what order do you value these things? Like when it comes to family, money, career choices, like obviously family's number one, but you know, below family, what are the things that you value the most?
Family's number one because nothing else matters. And I know that sounds cliche, but if I don't get a gig, my happiness isn't hinging. There's no show or role or opportunity I could get that would trump being satisfied and happy in my home life. And I went to LA to make it without really knowing what it was. And for some people, it's fame. I was never motivated by that. I have sort of witnessed or had access to people that were off the charts famous. It does not look fun. It looks sad and lonely and isolating. So for me, it is balance. And I can achieve that here because I've made this little cottage industry, make a bunch of shows in Truro for Bell 5 TV, sleep in my own bed, in the barn, go for a walk with the dogs and my wife, play some music with my girls. That's a great day, man.
Yeah.
And I have enough. I was in Europe recently for a gig, took my family with me. It was a great opportunity. And I was in a taxi in Lisbon on the way to the airport. And this guy was probably in his 30s. Like maybe here we tend to think of people that drive taxis as being like, this might be a thing you do later in life or if you have no other option. Mm-hmm. This guy was like, the big difference between us and you, meaning Europeans and North Americans, is we don't need much. We just need enough.
Wow.
And that blew my mind. It's such an obvious statement, but he was like, get up in the morning, go surfing, work for 5 or 6 hours. It's my job, not my life. Have dinner with friends most nights, go watch football game in the town square. What a beautiful existence.
Sounds amazing.
We put all this pressure on ourselves to have like, I encounter it in small ways when people say some version of like, don't you miss the noise, or like, aren't you trying to get on an NBC show or something? I don't have an agent because I'm not pursuing acting work. I'm really creatively fulfilled and happy in life. Yeah. I don't want to go to Calgary for 2 weeks to be a guest star on Heartland. I don't get a bump from that.
Yeah.
Man.
I think that just goes to you, though, as far as not having an agent and not knowing what it was, how you've kind of molded yourself into this creative world where now you're able to adapt to all these different roles without actually being like, hey, come do this. You kind of have, you know, created your own path and just taken all those roles and ran with them. And that's, you know, I would be proud of that. I know you probably are, but that's a rare, exactly.
Most people go to Toronto or LA.
Or you take acting school, or you go to Ryerson like you talked about you were going to do. But instead you created this own lane for yourself, and you've been molding, like from the extreme of J-Rock to the principal on Mr. D. Like those are two opposite characters from the same person, which I think is where a lot of people have a hard time, like maybe meeting you in person, because you're Jonathan in person, but people know you from TV, right? So it's like you're trying to differentiate yourself from those characters. But no, man, it's crazy to sit here and listen to you and think of all the things that you've done and basically on your own. Obviously, you've had help,
Classified's done the same thing, kind of. Like it's very, like it's a rare
created
breed.
A cottage industry for himself.
Well, yeah, exactly. He just lives. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like
big time.
Does he? He doesn't have a. You're pulling my leg. He doesn't have a cottage industry, does he?
No. That's an expression for like he's created like his own business from the ground up.
My apologies.
Cottage is somewhere that you're happy with and you're comfortable. So that's the cottage life.
But you know what I'm saying? Like Did
you just drop a Knome saying on me?
Did I? No, I'm saying it comes out. Many. It just comes out. But it's just like, you know.
No, he's someone whose career I completely admire because he's the only rapper from Enfield that I know of. He lives at home. He has a studio there. He tours a bunch and he's sold a lot of records. But I don't think he's trying to be something he's not.
Yes.
That's his main
and I always think about this, like, my wife just finished reading Matthew Perry's autobiography, and he, the guy from Friends, and he struggled a lot with addiction and painkillers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And at the end, he's talking about, you know, I've written a screenplay. I'm trying to get back in the game, and I'm waiting to hear from this A-list actor to see if she'll take my meeting and stuff. It just seems there's kind of a desperation to that to me. In a way, I feel like you're on Friends, dude. You made it.
Still making it.
Tap out. Like, thanks, guys. That was fun. I'm going to go sit on a farm in Wyoming. Take care. Like it's the waiting for the phone to ring that I think can be soul crushing. And I would just rather channel that time. Because when I was in LA, you do get in kind of this weird mindset where you're like, I auditioned for a show called Housebusters. And it was to host a show where someone suffered a tragedy in their apartment. And they bring in a team of psychics and feng shui experts to kind of smudge the place and give it a bit of a facelift. And I was like, man, are you sure this is a show? I would never want to host this in my life, because the copy was like, Janice, I know this is hard for you because your roommate was murdered, but have you thought about accent cushions? I'm like, what? This is a terrible idea for the show. But you get in this weird mindset where you're like, why didn't they call me back? I thought my audition was pretty good. And you're like, wait a sec, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Why don't I focus on the things I actually want to do and try to get those done?
Yeah. And it's quicker too. You feel like you're working harder because then you're not waiting around waiting for the phone to call. It's like,
well, there,
this
especially
sitting with your thoughts.
you have a manager who's waiting to hear from a casting director, who's waiting to talk to a director to see if the producer had a chance to watch it with the associate producer. Like,
oh my God,
your destiny is so far out of your own grasp that here I've witnessed more money doesn't necessarily mean more funny.
Yeah,
you can have more trucks and more people and more. It just takes more
bigger,
time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Trailer Park Boys, like the lighting, you guys are mostly outside. How long did it take to shoot one episode?
Most TV half hours are 4 days. I feel like we could do an episode in 3 because it was available light and the turnaround time was pretty quick, right? During the shoot, there's less lighting time and things like that. During the edit, probably takes longer because there's more footage and more takes to sift through.
Did you ever get to sit on the editing room and like go through your clips?
In the early years, no. Later years, a little bit.
Yeah.
But the weird thing about that show is technology got so good that you can make a movie with your phone now.
Literally.
So trying to make it look like garbage as technology got more accessible became a bit more of a challenge. And I directed episodes in seasons 9 and 10, and the camera guy, Peter Sutherland, is awesome. He's a CBC guy, lifelong career camera guy. And he did, I don't know if you remember Rick Mercer's Rants.
Yep.
Where Rick's walking down an
an
alley, and the
alleyway.
camera's going with him, and he'll stop, and
Graffiti.
the camera will tilt over, and he's a human steady cam. So the challenge with Peter was to not pan-anticipate, like I'm going to pan over to someone before they speak, because if it's really a documentary and you're following the action, you have to wait till someone starts to talk before the camera is on them. And that was something that we thought about a lot and talked about a lot as far as the premise goes. The premise is cameras are following these 3 guys. But it's also a TV show. So in some cases, if they're breaking into a bank, it's a cooler shot if the camera's in the bank and the guys come in the window and step over the camera. It's not true to the premise.
Right.
So do you choose to stay true to the premise or make the better shot?
So it's a mixture of.
It's kind of a mixture, yeah.
And those are things that when the average fan, like me or you, would never consider. It's just like, wow, they did a great job on this. But anticipate was the word that I remembered out of that, because it's like he knows what's coming as the camera guy. He knows who the next person to talk is. But if you're shooting a mockumentary, exactly. So instead of him going, same thing in hockey when we're doing video, you're anticipating the play because you know kind of what's going to happen. But to make it not look like that is something that just the average fan would never ever consider.
Was it harder to hit your marks that way? Like, okay, Jonathan, you got to be at that corner in 5 seconds while the camera guy's following you. Was it harder to hit the X spot?
Well, no, it's you're less bound to that, because especially with improv, if I say something different in take 5 than I said in take 4, then that's when it actually feels the most genuine, because he has to scramble and like, oh, he's
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
right.
A lot of the takes you probably use too.
Yeah. Well, especially in comedy, you're trying to shake each other out of the rhythm. Mm-hmm. It's more fun and keeps everyone on their toes if you're like, I don't know what he's going to say. Never know. And my secret mission was to make Mike laugh because he operated the camera sometimes. When I start to shake, I know I was in the pocket. But for Randy, I kind of prided myself on having a different disc spring-loaded for him every take so that it would maybe make him laugh or give him a genuine frig off J-Rock reaction,
That's my favorite part. If I can say anything about the show, it's the Randy disses. And my buddy, when he found out that you were coming on, that's all he could talk about was that. So
what a trooper he is.
Yeah.
Like, just to be able to take it.
Seriously.
Like, I think of Lloyd from Entourage and like how Ari just kind of like
hammers
him, but like what a trooper to be able to go through that and just take it and just be a pro. Be a pro.
I always think about that in a business that people have egos and pride. My wife and I were talking about this. Like, there's a character in the show called Ugly Fat Girl. Like, how does the actress going to that audition feel?
Right.
Like, what are you here for? Ugly Fat Girl. But Randy, or Pat, goes into cheeseburger training in the spring, puts like 15 lbs back on, gets it nice and bulbous. Like, could not be happier. He was working at Sparkling Springs, probably liked his job, but now he loves his life. He's doing Randy's cheeseburger picnics in 15 cities in the States. Yeah, packing them in and eating cheeseburgers and letting people slap his gut.
Dirty old Blue Jay
$15
burgers.
a slap.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Like, what a strange existence, but also awesome.
It's the world we live in.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He doesn't need much. He just needs enough.
Just needs no shirt.
No, I love it.
That's deep.
I love the part about this. I love the part of the world that you can drive for 30 minutes and you're in the country.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like about the big cities. I can go to Bridgewater, I'm there in an hour. Something about the wilderness that I really like. It's good for everything.
I found during the pandemic, especially when things got really complicated, like retreating to nature and going for walks by rivers and stuff, it's like COVID doesn't exist here.
Right.
The trees are the same. The rushing water is the same. Like
Some people thought it did. I saw a mask every now and then in the woods.
But
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody has that like option, and that was one thing I noticed because I live in Dutch settlements, so that's kind of the country, and we had just bought the house at perfect timing, and I was able to go out and enjoy my yard, or and it sounds kind of cheesy, if you will, but you're right, it didn't exist there. It was okay, I can't go to Superstore because you can get sick, but I can go out and go to the Lance Falls, or I can go and you can just appreciate the things that you never really took time to appreciate before.
I find that with especially the number of social media platforms that you could be on now, like if you're on them all, it's probably 9 or 10, and just checking them all is probably 20 minutes. If you want to contribute or respond, that's another hour a day. Like the columns of time in life, like do I want to spend 2.5 hours a day checking my social media? The reason it's complicated is for us, it's a business, it's marketing, it's getting your name and the word out there. And if Taggart and I have a show in Calgary, that's the shorthand way to let people know. But my wife, for example, is not on social media. It's not really for her, not interested, doesn't
Lucky
care what
woman.
people from high school did. She's the happiest person I know.
Bet.
She has no stress from those social media
The outside
platforms at all.
world.
Doesn't care.
I have a buddy who just got off it. Facebook asked him to put in take a picture of his ID to get back on it because he forgot his password. And he's like, that's it. But Facebook is also Instagram. So he's off everything now. And he's just same thing, just so happy. Doesn't care.
When you find yourself like you go somewhere pretty and think this would be a nice post, what?
I don't think like that personally.
I do a bit.
That's backwards, right?
I'm brainwashed in that sense.
I
a
usually
little
do
bit.
it-
But it's my job, social media. It's like I gotta,
Right.
it's part of it. I hate it. Not the favorite part of it, but it's part of it. It is what it is. Speaking of cottages and driving out to Bridgewater, it was maybe 2-3 years ago.
Speaking of segues,
Well, this is a good
going?
one. You're gonna like it. My mom actually asked me to bring this up to you because we were both in the car driving to Bridgewater, and it was Sheldon McLeod's last show, and you were on there.
Yeah.
And I thought what you said was beautiful. You praised him for the work he's done, and you praised him for the opportunities that he's going to have after. At the time, he didn't really know what he was going to do. It all worked out. I think he's at Saltwire now, but you and him had a great conversation for 30, 45 minutes, whatever it was, driving out to the cottage. We sat there, we listened. I just wanted to know what your relationship is with Sheldon and how, I guess, you went about that conversation, because he said some really cool things.
He's someone whose work I admire. He's a student of the craft and passionate about being an advocate for, local businesses and the arts. I'd never really given much thought to that relationship until in 2015, the Liberal government here axed our tax credit. And this was shortly after I bought this fleet of trailers, and it was really going to be damaging to my lifestyle. And News 95.7 outlets like that is a great way to get the message out there, whichever side you're on. Like, it'd never really been a political animal. It felt particularly pointed because most of the people in our community probably were liberals, and this was done quickly and without consultation, and just seemed like a bad decision. So we were probably naive in how we reacted to it. But I guess we sort of became friends through that. I guess the thing is, with someone like that, you're cruising along, you do this show every day, it's really popular, people really like you, you're thinking about tomorrow, and then suddenly the carpet gets pulled out from under you. Someone recently referred to life's banana peels. I love that expression. You're walking along and then, holy, what the clam? Never saw that. But my mom always said life would be so boring if you knew all the answers all the time. And it's true. Sometimes it's exciting to look ahead and see a blank sheet and think,
What can I do with
I
this?
don't know what I'm doing, but also I can do whatever I want. Like Kevin in Home Alone, when he's like, my family's gone.
Wait a
My
minute.
family's gone.
Yeah.
It's the same statement, statement with different sentiments. Yeah. So it's just trying to help him encourage embracing the unknown.
Yeah, that was great. And it was during that time of the pandemic where everyone needed an uplift. You're a special soul. You got that gift that you can make people feel happy, even in a character or just being yourself. It's kind of cool.
Well,
Did you have that as a kid? Were you like,
yeah,
It's
almost
always
to
been
a
with me.
fault.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault. Like my dad died when I was 8, and I remember thinking, like shortly after, this is great because I'm probably going to be really independent now.
At 8, you
like
thought
what
that?
a weird way to
process.
process some terrible information, like
Right.
being so optimistic. So I don't know if the optimism was born out of necessity in the wake of an incident like that, but I've also read about people that have lost parents or endured things like that as kids. They often go on to do okay in life because when you ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, it's not going to be worse than that.
It's already happened. Yeah.
It's already happened. So I'll roll the dice on this. Oh, I didn't get the part. Okay. Like by comparison, it's not nearly as bad.
Yeah. At this point of the career, and I want to say from the outside looking in, you've achieved your goals, you've made some money, you have a family, everything seems great. What's something that you're chasing now that, it seems like you've touched everything you've wanted to touch? Is there still something you're going, I got to do that?
I still put things through the Fun Money Challenge colander.
What's that?
Those 3 criteria that I think of. So any opportunity that comes my way, even outside of TV, I still consider those things. So got involved with a whiskey company recently.
Yes.
That's because it's something I've never done before. I genuinely like the product and the learning curve is really high. My father-in-law also shared the phrase false economy with me recently because sometimes I'll get really excited about an opportunity, but it's so far out the realm of my wheelhouse that there would be such a learning curve that it's false economy to think I could probably do this and take it on, right? For example, when we bought the trailers, I was trying to undercoat them because I'm a street sense guy. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I'm going to save the money from paying someone to undercoat them. I'll do it myself. Took me 6 days. Don't know if I did a good job. He's like, why don't you hire an undercoater to come do it in the morning? And then you've just bought 5.5 days of your life back to do what you're actually not so bad at.
Yeah.
So looking for kicks, but also trying to be realistic about what I'm not good at, which is as important a part of the journey.
Awesome. And I got to ask, how much time are we at right now?
7 hours.
An hour and 7 minutes.
Oh, geez. What's your time frame looking like?
I have to pick up the girls.
At what time?
At 1:30
in Truro?
Yeah.
Okay, so just like 10 more minutes if that's cool.
let's do
Okay. It's funny you brought the girls up. I asked this question to Pat Stay, rest in peace. He has such a unique career, and I always thought, what's your advice to your children that want to go on and maybe follow in your footsteps? Because what you do is so different. It's really hard to duplicate, yada yada. But I want the same question for you. It's what you do is it's you. It's personal. It's very hard to maneuver and copy. So what's your advice to when it comes to your 2 daughters? Sorry.
Yeah.
What's the advice for the 2 daughters growing up when it comes to picking a career choice?
It's funny. We were talking about this morning on the drive to school because, as I said, the homework stuff. There's no deadlines. There's no due dates. There's no stakes. There's no what's the word?
Repercussions,
Yes.
basically.
Consequences.
Yep.
That's the word I'm looking for. There are none of those. It's like a collective shoulder shrug. So I was saying, when you get a job, your boss isn't going to say 8:15 is fine, honestly, or 8:50, whatever you drive. Then no problem, as long as you come, as long as you show up. You don't get a ticker tape parade for showing up to work. And I'm worried that societally, those are the unrealistic expectations we're creating.
Big time.
So my advice to them is almost like the registrar from Ryerson in the hammering the learn people's names, say please and thank you, be on time. A big one is learn to take criticism. Because my daughter would say, for example, my dance teacher keeps correcting me. Like, she's not correcting you. She's teaching you. She's teaching you how to do something you've never done. And that is one of life's great shortcuts. If you can convert the don't tell me what to do energy into you've done this before, I haven't. Tell me everything you know. That is such a stepping stone and such a shortcut, but it doesn't feel good to be told what to do. But if you can get over yourself and accept criticism and learn that way, that's something I encourage them to do a lot. Because I think no matter what they do, those are skills that will serve them.
Translate forever.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what career path you choose as long as you keep those values.
Yeah.
You're good.
So now when we go places, they're so appreciative and so thankful and so vocal about it. People are like,
Easy.
Yeah. Their manners are impeccable.
Like at the Sobeys, like, tell me more. How does the cashier work? Like,
And they're also so, how are you doing? Good. How are you? I remember you had a job interview on Tuesday. Have you heard? And they're like, how does this child know how to carry on a conversation with someone?
Already.
Yeah. And it's my wife in large part. She's so selfless and generous with her time, and they're lovely little versions of her.
What was the first conversation like? Like, Dad, why do those people want a picture with you? Like, when did that happen, and what was that like?
I remember my oldest, who's 13 now, and she was probably about 5. She said in Sobeys, why did that man call you J-Ruff? J-Ruff. It wasn't J-Rock. She like kind of heard it, but didn't totally. Why did he call you J-Ruff? What's that about? But they challenge me and ask great questions, and we play music together, and they're just a good hang. It's like having tiny roommates that
Couple best
think
friends.
like you. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jonathan, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, man.
I feel like you just did.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm going to keep thanking you. I'll be texting you tonight. Thank you. But no, seriously, thank you.
It was a real pleasure. Maybe this
Yeah.
is chapter 1. We'll do it again sometime.
So that means you had a good time.
I had a
You
great
weren't offended.
time. No, I was excited. I talked a lot. I'll probably on the drive home be like, you monopolize the conversation a little bit. But I'm usually on your side of the table, and I like to ask the questions. So it's a treat from time to time to be asked the questions.
Awesome.
Do you know what you do really well? You both do. All three of you do. Is listen.
Never shut up.
Yeah, and that's a rare quality in an interviewer, and it's really the only quality. Peter Zosky, one of the great interviewers in Canadian history, said interviewing is like being in the back of a canoe steering and having the confidence to just let your guest paddle madly at the front
I like
towards
that.
the waterfall.
It was a learning curve though for us too,
Yeah,
right?
we always
Especially
used
for
to
me.
interrupt.
So yeah, appreciate that though.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
the
Nice.
big mistakes interviewers make is to ask the 6-part question. Would you say you did this, was it this, or this? And the answer is like, yep.
Yeah.
The second one?
It's like when you're texting and you keep asking questions and the person keeps answering them. It's just
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what he's talking about.
Although people that write a 4-page email that ends with thoughts, I don't like that either.
You're great at emailing. You're like a texter at emailing. Like when you said, what did you say yesterday? Yap or
Giddy up.
Giddy up.
Giddy up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you email like you text. And
Yeah,
like
like
sprayed,
got it,
sprayed,
saw it,
yeah,
good for it.
sprayed from my iPhone. Like you're
Yeah.
just, it's good. Yeah,
man.
Yeah, quick
Nice.
to the point. Love it. All right, we're out. I'm not going to say thank you again. Get out of
Okay.
here. Get the kids. Everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. It's Wednesday, hump day. Have fun. Work hard. You know what I'm saying?
Peace.
Out.